Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is award winning author. And of course, the author of several books, no other than Miss Hannah Parry. Welcome to Book 101, Miss Hannah, and can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Daniel. Thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Hannah Parry, and I am a self-published author. I've written two middle grade books, which are books for the kind of 9 to 13 age group. And Breathing for Both of Us, though, which came out at Christmas, is my first book for adults, and it's a medical thriller. Kind of a psychological thriller, you might say, but really there's a lot of medical detail in it too. And the two children's books are the first two of a trilogy. So I'm just writing now the third book of those ones. And I've got another adult book coming out in a couple of months.
How does it feel that you won an award for your writing?
Oh, that was amazing. And it was amazing, especially because it was bizarrely, it was on my birthday. I
Oh,
went
wow.
to a writers festival, and you'd had to enter beforehand, and they wanted us all to have pseudonyms so that nobody knew who anybody's writing was, and then it was judged anonymously. And I sort of hoped I might come third. That was kind of what I was hoping for. And I was sitting on the stage listening to them, and they read out this girl's name, and I thought, oh. And then they read out a second. And then just at that moment, I was thinking, right, I'll just get my bag because I've got to catch a train. And then they read out my name. It was amazing. It was absolutely, I was thrilled to
Amazing.
bits. And what it means
Yes,
is validation, isn't it?
for sure. And because
Yeah.
of that, Miss Hannah, I'm gonna give you a cheering squad. I hope you like it. Oh, more awards to come. Yeah, and looking forward for more books to come. So,
Hopefully.
Miss
Yeah, that would
Hannah,
be really nice.
what's inspired you to become an author?
I used to write in the olden days. You are too young to remember this, but we used to have address books called filofaxes. And in the filofaxes, they had pages at the back, just blank pages. And I used to go and I'd get drunk and I'd write in the back of, I didn't really know what I was doing informally. I used to just write things. And, but when I was 31, my mother died very suddenly. She literally went to bed one night and she didn't wake up the next morning. And my writing became much more organized after that. I think that was how I was going to process her death. And I ended up taking a degree about quite a long time after she died, because I was only 31. Took a degree when I was about 38, 40, maybe it was later than that. And because I hadn't had much formal education, I really struggled at school. I had ADHD. I had a difficult home life, so I found concentrating really difficult. So I had to catch up with how to write. I wanted to learn how to do it properly. I knew I could write. Does that make sense? I knew I could write, but I wanted to learn how to do it. So that education was really important. But it was really, I think a lot of writers turn up to this after having gone through some kind of trauma. I hate to say it, but I think it's true.
So, can you tell us about your writing process?
Sorry, it's really hot here in England. I've been outside. It's never hot in England, but today it does happen to be
Very
hot.
hot.
um,
Climate change.
yeah, I know, right? Whereabouts are you?
Yes, I'm from Canada. It's raining here because we have a wildfire. We need rain.
Oh, you do need rain, don't you? You've got.
Yes, that's
Are you
why.
near the
Yes, right.
wildfire in?
Yes.
I've been reading about that.
Mm,
I hope you're
yes.
all right. Um,
So, can you tell us your the
yes,
writing
sorry.
process,
Writing
Miss
process
Hannah?
is you have to be. I wouldn't say I'm a disciplined person, but this I know that if I don't get up and do it first thing in the morning, it doesn't get done. If that makes sense. I get up. I've got animals, so sort the animals out. There's a online. It's called the London Writers Salon, and it's an online group, and they all write together. And it starts at 8 o'clock. They have 4 different sessions throughout the day, and I hit the 8 o'clock session. And because it's all set up for people writing together, it gets me in the flow. I read what I've written yesterday, cut out half of it, and then what I find is once I've done that hour, they've got another room, and I go into another room with a couple of other writers, and I can then write quite happily non-stop until about 12:30. So I aim for 1,000 words a day, and I've got to do those 1,000 come hell or high water. And if I don't do them in that first set of the day, I find I don't write very well in the afternoon, but I can write again sort of early evening between 5, 6, 7, 8. There's a kind of sudden window of activity, my energy comes back up and I can write again. So I have to catch up and I have to do 1,000 words. So I've got to do a minimum of 4,000 words a week. And it mounts up, if you can do that. Pretty soon you will have a book, or you'll have at least half a book, if that, but it's tough. And there are days where it's just not working. And my teacher, one of my favorite teachers, taught me at university that if it's not working, you have to just write through those bits. If you think the next sentence looks terrible, you've got to just write the next sentence after that, and then the next sentence after that, and not worry about the fact that it's terrible, because if you don't write it, you've got nothing to edit. So you've got to just keep going. But it can be awful sometimes. And then other times it can
Yes,
be absolutely, when you're in the flow, it can be amazing. It can be amazing.
totally agree, Miss Hannah. And stop procrastinating, people. Go, go, go. If you have the passion to write, write, and share to the world. So, Miss Hannah, what challenges you have faced in your writing career?
The most difficult have been trying to become traditionally published. I am traditionally published insofar as I have a short story in a book that's been traditionally published, but I mean having a novel published by a traditionally published. I'm self-published, so I do all the work for these books myself. You have to, in this business, most publishers will not look at you unless you have an agent. I've had 1, 2, 3 agents. My my first agent, who I thought was fantastic, she took me on, and this book, Breathing for Both of Us, because it's a medical thriller, she delivered it to publishers the first week. It went out to publishers the first or the second week of March 2020. And what happened was that the publishers all came back saying, because at that point, the whole world was starting to shut down because of COVID. I mean, it was looking really bad at that point. Our Prime Minister went into hospital the same week that it went out to publishers. And they all came back to my agent and said, I'm really sorry, this is too dark. It is a dark book, but this is too dark for me. I'm just not feeling it. We want something lighter. And I So I sort of took that on the chin, and I thought I could understand, I could completely see what they meant. But what happened is that that agent had a very bad summer, and I went off and started another book, this book that's just about to come out. And I delivered it to her in November, 25,000 words, to say, what do you think, to get her first impressions of it. And she came back to me and she said, Hannah, and I was actually at the gynecologist's at this point. I was sitting outside the gynecologist's office, and I got the email from her, and she went, Hannah, I'm so sorry. My mother has died. I'm going to cut all my fiction authors. I'm just going to concentrate on nonfiction, and I'm going to have to let you go, and I'm so sorry. And I know that she was really sad to do that, but that was almost worse than the publishers not taking the book originally, because it had taken me so long to get an agent, and I was so excited to have her, but it just wasn't meant to be. And she was very kind to me. And then I went into the gynecologist. So I'd had this awful news. And then I went into the gynecologist office, and she said, I'm sorry, you're going to have an operation. And I just thought, this is
What?
like this is my worst day ever. It was a very small operation. It was not a big operation. So I survived. But this next book that I had written and finished writing, I submitted it to every agent in the world. I think I've sent out 152 submissions for this book. And I've had so many requests for people saying, can you write it like this? Can you do it like this? And eventually I would make the changes, or I would not make the changes, because if I thought, sometimes you have to stick to your guns and you think, actually, those are not correct for the book. But what happened was that I think it was maybe very unfashionable, and people didn't like the topic, the story matter. And so it didn't pick up an agent either. So now I'm going to self-publish that one as well. But the fantastic news is that Breathing for Both of Us is doing really well. And in a couple of months, I'm going to have another book. So off the back of Breathing for Both of Us, hopefully the new book is called The Baby Exchange, and hopefully that will do well too if people like it. So that's... Do you know what, Daniel? I can't even remember what the question was. I think you asked
That'd
me,
be awesome.
is
That'd
it
be
difficult?
awesome, Miss Hannah. So, how do you handle writer's block? But before you answer that, I just want to say hi to all the viewers on TikTok. Thank you so much for watching us right now. So, how will you handle writer's block?
That I think I've got a bit of it at the moment, actually, because I can find myself editing and fiddling around with things and doing PR instead of doing the actual writing. The real blocks have to do with confidence. And that's when I think that teacher's advice came in. So if you are feeling that you don't have the confidence to write anything, or maybe you've written a little bit and you don't have the confidence to continue, just go back and read. It doesn't have to be, 20,000 words. Go back and read 5,000 words, 1,000 words that you've written, or even 500 words that you've written, and just look at the last sentence and say to yourself, right, what do I think should come after that? So, the cat sat on the hat. And then you think, well, I'll put, and then he ate green eggs and ham, full stop. And then I went down the road to see if Sam, I think if you take it really piecemeal, you can get your way through those writer's blocks, and they don't last very long. If you can just get through the next few sentences, you will normally find that the flow will come back. For the real massive crisis of confidence, I think workshops are a really good idea, because then you go into, there's loads of workshops, online workshops. You can pay, you can not pay. you can go into a Zoom room or you can in person. You kind of get locked in a room with a teacher who says, right, I want 30 words on a rainbow, and you all have to sit there and write 30 words on a rainbow, and that just gets the juices flowing. And I think those kind of things bring back, it's like getting back the love of writing and not thinking about what it has to be like at the end, just writing for the love of doing it, and writing because you think what you've written looks cool, because
Yes.
we all like writing a cool sentence. So that would be my best advice, I think.
Definitely, Miss Hannah, and thank you for that advice. But before we go on, I want to shout out my listeners in Jamaica. Thank you,
Mhm.
Jamaica, for supporting this podcast because in Kingston, I got 55% audience share, St. James 27, and Clarendon at 18%. Again, thank you, Jamaica, for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world
Fantastic.
like Miss Hannah Perry. So, Miss Hannah, what authors or books have influenced your writing?
There's some kind of slightly obscure Indian books that I read when I was growing up. I'm just seeing if I've got a copy here. There's an author she's called MMK, the initial MMK, and she wrote. Her family were all in India. Um, when the English all went over to India, and they basically for hundreds of years stole everything from India and took
Yes.
over India and ran it and did this and that. She wrote about that time. Her family were based there, so there were a lot of English kids who never ever came back to England. They were born and raised there, and they stayed out there. And there were lots of brilliant books called. There was one called The Little Princess, which I read when I was younger, and that was about. So what would happen sometimes is that these poor children, they've been brought up in beautiful, beautiful India, would come back to England where it'd be raining and snowing and the food was terrible and people were very stiff and unbending. And it's just the first two books, the children's books, I've just written about a girl that's what it happens to her basically. But they're thrillers, really. They're adventure thrillers. So that's where my love of India. I'm actually going there in November for the first time. I'm very, very excited. So those two books are about India. The last one will be about India. Those were so it was MMK and Frances Hodgson Burnett was the writer of A Little Princess. Very quite old fashioned books now, but worth reading if you have any interest in Southeast Asia. And then Breathing for Both of Us. I've always loved books there's an author called Celeste Ng, which is the surname is Ng, N-G. And she writes, I would call it, I would say psychological thrillers or upmarket fiction. So it's like commercial fiction, but with a little bit more sophisticated, I suppose. And also Gillian Flynn, who wrote a book called Sharp. Gillian Flynn wrote Gone Girl, which was very famous, and that was made into a movie. She also wrote a book called Sharp Objects, was also made, I think Netflix did it with Amy Adams, and it was a very, very good series, really worth watching. But I read the book, and that book, it made a huge impact on me, and I can see in Breathing for Both of Us where I've kind of copied Sharp Objects. I've basically completely
Yes.
the point of view and the kind of backstory and things like that. I just looked at it and I thought, well, you have actually tried to write sharp objects. That's what you've done. But that's okay. That's okay.
Yes.
Everything is fan fiction, isn't it?
Yes. So, Miss Hannah, can you share a memorable moment from your writing career?
Well, winning that prize was amazing because that was with my first book. So that was really absolutely awesome. But the the thing that really blew me away was I wrote a short story in lockdown. You know how everybody was writing in lockdown, so I wrote the baby exchange in lockdown. But I also wrote a short story that I've been thinking about for a long time.
Hmm.
And I just this sort of shows that your subconscious works in extraordinary ways. And I wrote it and I found it was running away with itself, and that means that I started writing and it was almost as if the characters took over. That sounds so naff, and I hate it when writers say that, but I really didn't need to do much. It was like the story just unfolded. And I sent it off, to a short story award with the BBC in London. The BBC have a short story award every year, but you have to be published. So I had to take a photo of the story and the little tiny story I'd got in the collection of short stories, and I sent it in, and they were very embarrassed to have to ask me if I was published or not, and I said, yeah, I am. Sent them the photos. Anyway, I got a letter from them saying, you, out of 1,010 entries, you were in the top 50. I didn't win or anything, but these are all published authors. So I was up against published authors and I was in the top 50, and it means, and I can use it on all my, my media. But
Yes.
I'd been judged with my peers, if that makes sense. I've been judged up against published proper authors. Proper. I mean, I'm not saying published or self-published are not proper, because they are, and I am one. But people I look up to, who were writing before I started writing, and yeah, that was really gratifying. So it's all ego. It's all ego stuff.
It's all about ego. And because of that, Miss Hannah, well, very well said. Very well said. And before we go on, I want to invite our listeners to please purchase one of my audiobooks. People, one of my audiobooks, Stand Tall, Stand Together, Breaking the Chains of Bullying, available on Audible. And of course, my Book 101 Review, Volume 3. These are all my products of my first season of my 100 episodes. Book 101 Review, Volume 3 Suggestions. And of course, speaking of climate change, Earth's fever and the unraveling climate and our race to restore balance. What happening to the world is what we call climate change, people. So please do purchase my audiobooks, Earth Fever. Or audiobook, Earth Fever. And of course, Book 101 Review, Volume 2 Selected. Again, this is my 100 episodes of my first season of Book 101 Review, Volume 1, highly recommended, of course. And one of my self-help book, Threads of Existence, Weaving the Tapestry of Life. And Life is Too Short, a journey of discovery, fulfillment, and joy. Please do purchase them, available bestsellers on Audible. So, Miss Hannah, what will be your advice for the aspiring writers out there?
Read every book you can get your hand on. Read everything. If you read a lot, I think you can write. I've never met a reader who couldn't write. I hope that's okay if I say that. I like all your books. You've written a lot, haven't you?
Thank you so much.
Amazing. Good for you.
Thank you. So, people, read, as Miss Anna said, because once you read, your imagination will explore, just like Miss Hannah. So, Miss Hannah, can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I've never done this before. Please go ahead. Actually, I tell you what I can do is that today Winter's Bite is free
Mm.
on Amazon. So any of your readers can go and download a free Kindle version. I'm afraid it's only Kindle at the moment. It's not on Nook or anything like that yet. And then Fever Quest, which is the sequel to Winter's Bite. I think it's only 99 cents tomorrow, so the price is completely dropped tomorrow. So that's just something. And Winter's Bite will be free for the next few days.
Yes.
And Breathing, there will be a free day on Breathing. If anybody wants a copy, if you go to my website, which is listed on my Amazon author page, and you can let me know, and you can fill in a contact form, and I can let you know when the next free day for Breathing for both of us is going to be.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Hannah Perry, because if you support her, more books to come. So, Miss Hannah, I'm inviting you again next week if you are available
Oh, sure.
to talk about your Breathing for both of us.
Sure.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk about all your books one by one and let's promote them.
Okay, that'd be
This
lovely.
podcast is created to empower you all over the world, all writers, authors, all over the world. But for next week, I have a guest this same time. He's She's from the UK too, so I will let you know what time you will be available. I'm available for our next interview. So, Miss Hannah, thank you for your time.
Me, Daniel. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks to
More
all the listeners.
Yes. More to come, people. See you soon.